Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another week of Wake Up with Patti Katter. Today, I have a special guest with me, Candace Cieslo. Candace, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me, Patti.
Yes, I'm very excited to have Candace on the show today because I have known Candace for a long time, since 2008. We actually went to Guatemala together back in the day. And so, Candace, first of all, just welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would love it if you could just tell my listeners a little bit about yourself because I know you really well and I know the badass that you truly are. But I want my listeners to know this too.
Sure. Thank you. You're overselling right now, I have to say. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's an honor. Just a little high level view. Currently I am the Chief Operations Officer for a nonprofit humanitarian organization called the Black Feather Foundation. And prior to that, it is kind of a hodgepodge of a pattern of how my life has evolved, but it's all been based around helping and serving and kind of those fields. So I was a adjunct professor at the University of Alaska Matsu campus. I taught business there, 4 different courses there. And prior to that, I was actually in the Army. I served from 98 to 2007. I got out as a captain. And then prior to that, I attended Georgetown University. I was a Division I basketball player for Georgetown, and we were the co-Big East champs in 1993 and went to the Sweet 16. So that was a pretty amazing era of my life. To continue my education, I worked and earned my master's degree, and I was working towards my doctorate until August of 2021, when my husband and I, he's retired military, and we volunteered to go help out with the withdrawal from Afghanistan to help our allies. And I ended up serving over in Abu Dhabi at the refugee camp for off and on for about 6 months. And because of that, I get to add to my my life. We have 3 biological children. We have a 4th that has been with us for quite a while, and we love him. He's ours. But then we are the legal guardians of 3 Afghan refugee children who are just amazing, hardworking, incredible. So there are 7 that we call our own, and then of course my husband. So yeah, that's the high level view.
Oh my goodness. And her story is so extensive, y'all. So most people wouldn't just see what was going on in Afghanistan with the withdrawal. They wouldn't just look at the TV and think, what can I do to go there? What can I do to go help? How did that even come about? What was happening? Did you actually see it on the news first, or were you kind of given a heads up, or how did that all unfold for you?
That is an interesting story. And what I didn't throw in there is I am a Christian, and I say that because it's the only way I can explain what happened and how it happened. So I was working for Samaritan's Purse, and they have a DART program. It's the Disaster Area Relief Team, and they go into other countries or around the country now. When disaster strikes, they're always one of the first ones on the scene. So I was working with them, but in order to help internationally, particularly with the Afghan, you see it unfolding and you know what's about to happen. And so I went and finally got my COVID shot. I got the first one. It was August of 2021, and I had a really bad reaction. I ended up in the ER twice. They actually listed me as having a cardiac arrest. So I was sitting on the couch, which is not my norm. I tend to move quite a bit. And we were watching this unfold, and my husband and I were just, everybody in the military we've lost so many friends. I lost a really good friend September 11th from Georgetown. And so it was very personal. So to watch this unfold the way it did, it was very heart-wrenching. And I'm sitting on the couch getting more frustrated, and Samaritan's Purse called, and they asked me, would you like to help via the phones? And I said, absolutely, I'll do whatever I can. So we found there was a little bit of a backup in processing because of the massive numbers that were coming in. So we're trying to reach out and help people via Signal or WhatsApp to families that are on the ground and hear how we can help, if there's anything we can do to move them forward. We teamed up. I worked with a Samaritan's Purse, helped me get involved with another organization, all within a matter of hours. to do this work. A very long story short, my husband and I found that there was a refugee camp in Abu Dhabi. And so we volunteered. We just basically hopped on a plane and went to Abu Dhabi. And we went to help, see how we could help. Thought we'd be there for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. And I ended up staying over there, like I said, off and on for about 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's kind of funny because most people, they also don't think, I'm just going to jump on a plane and go to Abu Dhabi and go help with, across the world. And I have 3 kids at home, or 4 kids. And, we're just going to manage it all. And I mean, you're really the most motivated person I think I've ever met in my life. And I've met a lot of people in my life. And I've had a lot of people on my show, but to actually personally know you and know your capability of like your God-given talents, because there's no other excuse. I mean, it's a God-given talent because you just keep going and you have such a heart to help people. So you're kind of in chaos, you and your husband, all of a sudden you're across the country or across the world, I should say. And what happens when you land and you get off of the plane? What was your first reaction?
So we had to, first, it's kind of funny because we had to go into the country an unconventional method. And we get there, and the first thing I was really surprised I think most people, when you think of a refugee camp, you think of tents and very dire conditions. Well, the Emiratis had the refugees in amazing conditions. And so I was really taken aback and thankful that they took such good care of them. So that was one. 2, there was from a professional side, the disconnect between the U.S. government and what was happening on the ground was phenomenal. And the NGOs that came over, there were a lot, and we've all heard of different stories and heroics and things that took place to help out and facilitate this cause. So I was able to meet up with a group that had been there, working there for about 10 days before my husband and I landed. And it was all in the special operations community skill set. So we get there, and of course, most veterans are proud of their service, but then you have a group that are very close hold of what they do, and they're not just going to put it all out there. And so it took a few minutes for us to kind of quietly vet each other and to make sure that Joe and I were who we said we were, et cetera. And then it ends up, I'd crossed paths several times with a couple of them. So that was a unique experience, but to see this level of professionalism in one place and to hear what they did way before I got there, and the number of people they had already, by the time I got there, were about 10,000 people they'd already managed to get out safely. So it was kind of overwhelming to see the resourcefulness of your average citizen, to see the dedication to our allies. And part of this was, there is a gentleman named Aziz, who I love and now is my brother. But Chad Robichaud went over, and he was part of the catalyst to go in and help Aziz, because Aziz was his translator when he was over in in Afghanistan, I apologize. And when he was in Afghanistan. So, just to meet these guys and see what they're willing to do to save people they love and that they care about, it was really humbling to watch the whole event unfold.
So I know that as a civilian watching the news unfold in the United States, I was really upset about how it appeared like it was being handled. It looked like complete, total chaos. And so when you arrived, is that kind of what you felt as well? Or is it just, how sometimes the media can clip and show only certain parts? What was your thought process on that?
It was much worse. It was much worse on the ground. It was much worse. It was much more complicated and dire. And the strength of the people that were going through it is what I remember. So the first day that I was actually in the refugee camp, I heard stories that were very fresh and very raw. And some of the things that they showed me out of desperation for human contact. So I went in as a vet, like a female engagement teams, and the culture, the Afghan culture, is very traditional, and men don't necessarily interact with women from other cultures. So I was able to go in and have a more intimate conversation with people, with our translators. So, but I was shown videos of people being raped, and some of the other stories I actually wouldn't talk about because they are pretty traumatic. And my own children that we have now have told me stories from the days of sitting there with no food, no water, people soiling themselves, stepping over dead bodies, babies, elderly, and it was really, it's so much more than the average person has been able to look behind the curtain and see. And the chaos and the guns firing on open firing on people randomly just at will. I mean, it was pretty, even secondhand hearing the information was more traumatic than stuff I'd seen in real life in Iraq or with my soldiers. This hit me in a much deeper level.
So tell me, and my listeners, people don't understand how the chaos started. So basically, you know, we see these airplanes on TV and we see people trying to climb into the airplanes. A lot of people don't even realize what was going on that led up to that moment. Why would people fire into crowds? Why are there dead bodies laying around? Like, people don't really understand it's the Taliban that was behind all of that, correct?
Right. So, so the gentlemen that were there doing the extraction, those 10 guys, so their accounts to me of exactly what happened. And again, my children's accounts, you know, on one side you had Russian soldiers, on one side you had American soldiers, on one side, you know, on a different part of the wall, you had Taliban. And when people would push too close, the Taliban would just open fire just at their will. Apparently no orders, no nothing, just any random person could open fire. And it was really hard on our soldiers, and the people were terrified, of course, but on our soldiers, they were not allowed to engage. They were not allowed to engage. They were watching men, women, children be murdered right in front of them, and they were not allowed to engage. And that trauma for our troops, I can't even imagine. I just can't even imagine.
So somebody who, for me, a civilian, and I know you have to listen to military orders. Is there a line where you can go? I mean, you go against your orders, right? And then you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get Article 15. You're going to maybe face prison. You're thinking in your head. Is there any kind of logical thinking, though, where you think, like, morally, I have the obligation to go against my commander's orders? And if you do that, though, what's the repercussion of that?
Yeah. So, my husband and I often discuss what would we do if, you know, we war game things after they've happened, and what would I have done? Would I have been able to watch that happen? And the answer is, you really don't know. You really don't know how you're going to respond to someone firing at you until you've been in that circumstance, or when you have incoming, until it happens. And you can say with all the bravado that you would do and try to do the right thing. But one, we don't know what we would do until we're in that position. Yes, you can go against military orders and there would be repercussions. However, if they give you an illegal order and you don't follow it, you are in the right. But rules of engagement are pretty staunch. There were instances of people that decided to do the right thing. I don't know who this soldier was, and I'd love to give him a hug. But there was an explosion. My son fell into one of the ditches at Abbey Gate at HKIA. He fell in, and an American soldier pulled him through and just let him go through. And thank God. Was he authorized to do that? Probably not. Did he do the right thing? Absolutely.
So, you all of a sudden, you're thrown into this role. I've been told you were overseeing 18,000 to 20,000 refugees. Is that correct?
When I was there, it was probably closer to 15,000. The EHC, where they were, processed almost 20,000. So yeah, it was a pretty big number. The last that I was aware of was around 18,000, but they processed a lot. And by the time I left, it was closer to 15. So yeah.
So I can just picture you, Candace, because you're such a go-getter. I can see you running on fumes. You probably didn't sleep very much. You were probably up as late as you could be up until your eyes just wouldn't stay open any longer. And then you were probably awake first thing in the morning. To live that for how many weeks or months?
I was there from August to the end of January, but I did have breaks where I went home. I had to fly home for Halloween.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
even doing that though, you're in that intense situation. How do you how do you turn it off? Um,
So for me, I was actually I work a little different. I compartmentalize, which is a good thing, probably why I was able to do some of the jobs I did. I compartmentalize pretty well. And so when I'm there, I am there. I'm not thinking about my children. My husband is completely capable. I know my children are fine. I'm not thinking about anything else but the job. So really, when you're deployed, for me, it's a little bit simpler life because I don't have laundry. I'm not worried about transportation. I don't have, I'm not a soccer mom. I'm not, I don't have to pay the bills. I don't have to do anything. I just have to do my job. So that really simplifies my mind and allows me to work longer, harder at one task. So yeah. So
it's kind of funny hearing this because you guys, she just is like, I don't have to be a soccer mom. Like, that's so hard. It's so much harder than being deployed in this refugee area.
It is. It is. Moms, you are heroes. I am my poor kids. I can't cook. I can't sew. Moms are the heroes. So I was in Iraq and I would see men, and I was in a specialized unit, and people would have pictures of their kids around the frames of their computers, and I had no pictures of my kids. I would only call them once a week, and that was it. And I just refused. I just couldn't bring all that emotion of a mom, like worrying, protecting, changing diapers. And my kids were little. They were like 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 when I was in Iraq. And I could not bring that with me. And so when I went back and I was over there, same concept. And they're older, and they're older kids at the time. It was my daughter's senior year. But I just couldn't bring that with me, or that would have made my job 10 times harder. Think about what think about what you do in a day. It's like, hey mom, I need this. And it's 3:00 and they need it at 3:05. Like that kind of constant, it's constant peppering at home.
Yeah.
And
it's true.
Yeah. So
true.
Moms, do not let your husband lie.
So this is kind of a fun, topic that people don't actually understand, because a lot of my guests have been male on my show, so they're the dads, and I feel like there's not as much pressure for a dad to be around his family, because that's his job. And it's a really neat experience for me to have you on the show, because it's the same. It's the same. At the end of the day, it's the same. It's your job. It's important. You're helping to provide for your kids. Even if you're not there in person, it's indirectly, you've given them an amazing upbringing. I know your kids, I know your family life, and I know you have an amazing family life. Not only that, you're trying to help other people in countries away have a great family life. So tell us about when you're coming home and you're thinking that you're going to start leaving all of this behind you, right? How did your trip home go? And what happened once you arrived home?
So from the last trip?
Yes.
I actually had the opportunity to bring my son over for a month. He is in college, super bright. I knew he's a natural leader. He played sports through high school, earned a 4-year JRTC scholarship. So I knew the quality he was, but it changes when you think to when you see them become an adult and you see that put in action. So he was over there with me from late December through January. And it was beautiful to see him, grow and appreciate and solve problems and be in different cultures and be very comfortable in that environment. However, while we were there, we did have an incoming round come into Abu Dhabi twice. And I did send him home, even though he's 6'3", and I'm like, you're going home. But I did send him home because it reminds you, and that was my last tour there. And then I come home, and things really had changed. My son was 13 at the time, and moms and dads, that your kids, if you blink, all of a sudden they're taller, or they're they've changed personalities. And Max had really changed. My youngest had really grown up without me being there. So it was beautiful because we raise our children different. A man raises different than a woman. Right. Period. And so some of that softness that I had been giving him wasn't there. And he just really grew up, and I was heartbroken a little bit. Like, where's my baby?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wasn't a baby anymore. And then my daughter had gone through most of her senior year without me there.
Mm-hmm.
So watching my family grow without me did two things. It was very peaceful to know that they're going to be fine. Like, you've done your job, you've raised them right. And then the other part of it was like, wow, I've missed so much. Because when they were younger, I knew they wouldn't remember me being gone. My children do not ever remember me being in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
But this, my children will always remember. And so that kind of, you know, it's hard. And I have people that don't agree with what I did. I have people constantly ask me, why do you go overseas and help? We need so much help here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And who don't agree with what I do and how I do it. So yeah, facing that.
That is a good point, because I've had a lot of people who comment on my shows or who've asked me privately, you know, why are you focused on international help? Why are you focused on international policy making? Why do you think that these things are important? And I don't think that the majority of the Americans understand that these days, especially, international work is so important, because if we don't help internationally, some of these issues are going to creep up here in America at home. So if we're not taking care of, for instance, our Afghan interpreters, we don't fulfill our promises to them, they're going to remember that, and that could spark international issues as well as national issues, correct?
Absolutely. I think that this has been a tipping point for many countries and how they view us. We did not follow through on our commitment to Afghanistan and the allies that we had there. And we have definitely lost favor in the international community. Unfortunately, our news doesn't lend to showing that side of it through that lens. But if you look at outside resources other than our mainstream media, you'll get a fuller and more encompassing perspective of how we are viewed as Americans, and it is not it's not pleasant to watch that. Yeah.
So once you're home from UAE, and once you know that you're going to be staying home, you don't plan on going back right now to like at the time you come home, you don't plan on going back right away anyways. You're home and you're just trying to pick back up where you left off before the whole situation happened. So tell me about, how in the world did you end up having 3 Afghan children in your home? I mean, you didn't just pack them in your duffel bag and bring them back.
Yeah, it's kind of an amazing story. So relationships are so important, and building those relationships early on have been pretty critical in my life. You know, I met you when we were much younger. And the bond that you create when you're younger is so much more authentic. And when you're not somebody, you know, you're just you. And so I have a relationship like that with a friend from college, just very authentic relationship, but he happens to have a significant amount of pull in the international community. I got a phone call, to backtrack a little bit. I got a phone call in probably February. I left in January, February, early March, saying, hey, you know, we identified 40 unaccompanied minors. In other words, they're 40 kids, not related, that they were separated from their parents at age Kaya, which is an entire different story. And all of them, we managed to find family connections or cousins or a way for them to move forward and go to the US. When I left, we were down to 6. And then by the end of it, there were only 3 left. And my contact said, there is no path forward for these boys. So the Emiratis, who have been amazing in all their support, they're not part of UNHCR. So this means that they are not beholden to some of the international regulations that the rest of the countries, a lot of the countries are. They have done this truly out of the generosity of their hearts and to help and to be humanitarians. But if the boys don't have a way forward, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen to them. So I called this friend from college that I've known for a very long time. And we were able to find a way. So he suggested that humanitarian parole. So we got them under humanitarian parole. We were very lucky to be able to use that. But that means that we are the legal guardians of them. We receive no help receive no financial, they are not on Medicare, Medicaid. It is the financial responsibility is completely on us. And that is something that we knew going in. It's kind of like getting married. You think you know what you're getting into, but you don't quite. So it has been a learning curve dealing with asylum and dealing with the refugee status and applying for citizenship and trying to get them acclimated in languages and cultural norms that we take for granted that are not cultural norms other places. So it has been an amazing process. We are not even close to through. They've just done another phase of the process for asylum, and it'll keep going for several years.
I think that people don't realize how extensive it is. What would you say to people who might comment negatively, saying things like, oh, we don't want any illegal immigrants? First of all, obviously, those who are educated know that that's not the situation with refugees. But can you kind of just touch on that a little bit? Because I know that all of my listeners have a huge heart for America and the backbone of America. And we talked about how important it is for America to uphold its promises. And really, at the end of the day, the majority of people who are in America have come here from different types of lives. We're the melting pot of the world, right? So just what would you say about that when you hear maybe some negative comments?
Yeah, and I understand that. I think we have to be careful of not crossing the lines of illegal immigration and people seeking refugee from a terrorist regime or those who have faced natural disasters. And the best way that I can kind of put it in perspective, this isn't someone, there's particularly the children, but these aren't people who are like, I think I'm going to sneak into the United States and do bad things. These are people that right here, right now, we get up and we have to leave in what we have on, what's in our pockets and what we can carry, and that is it. And then you go to a country, you're put in a country, you don't know the language, the culture, the food, the customs, you know nothing about it. So if I was to be dropped in the middle of Turkey, for example, I mean, and then, okay, well, here you go, make it work. Like it is not a welcoming environment. And also with the Afghans that came through, they are vetted. They have been members who have helped our efforts in Afghanistan. So these people have been vetted and they're such hard workers. My children the school loves them. They both, the older two have jobs. They're just hardworking and they just want a chance. They are not trying to take anything. They just want to earn their way. And the hope that they see, hope is such a powerful thing. They just have hope. So there it is. It's a big difference between those who are coming in illegally and those who have worked hard to get here or are trying to go through the process of becoming legal American citizens. Big difference.
Yes. Thank you so much for explaining that too, because you did it a lot more eloquently than I would have done. I would have just said, you guys suck it up. So what's next for you? Do you know?
That is a good question. So my daughter, that's a big question.
Yeah, especially with Candace, you all. I mean, it's been a roller coaster.
It has been an interesting, so in life in general, I turned 50 this year. So I feel like I'm just starting a new chapter. Maybe retire into the mountains. No, for the children, the goal for the children is to make sure that they are set up and given the tools to succeed. I will not do that for them, but I will give them the foundation and the tools and the resources to make sure that they're set up to succeed, as I did with my children, as I would do for any person that I helped. Now, I'm not going to spoon feed. I refuse to do that. But so that's with the children. For me, my daughter makes fun of me because she's like, Mom, you've done all this stuff. And I'm like, I haven't done anything. She looks at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And she'll say that. But she'll start listing some of the things, and they're just, when it's your life, like your life, Patti, like your life is amazing and you're so accomplished, but you're so humble because for you, it's just your life, you know?
That's her. I mean, it's true.
It's just your life, you know? I've I jumped out of airplanes. I've traveled a lot. I've gone to a lot of countries. I've done a lot, but what's next is I love cultures. I love exploring. I'd love to keep working in a humanitarian field that helps children find a way, because truly that is where you change lives. And you don't just change that life, but it is generational. You know, it's secondary and tertiary. You're changing their lives and their children's lives and the generations that you can impact by just being nice, not judgmental, not mean, not, you know, catty, just be nice, you know, hope.
So true. And you are doing that with the Black Feather Foundation. You have a pretty incredible opportunity to continue to reach more children through.
Yes.
So Candace is the program director at Black Feather Foundation, and she's truly incredible. They're a newer nonprofit, and they're working on some details to help more refugees. But you know, you just continue just to awe and inspire me and all of those who are around you. And really, it's funny because I have known you since 2008, but the more and more we spend time together, I can see other aspects of your life I had no idea about. So we met each other in 2008, and that was at Fort Bragg area in North Carolina at a Barnes and Noble back in the day.
It's a great story.
It is.
You should tell that story.
It's so good, you guys. So we, so myself and my son Hunter, we were planning a trip to go to Guatemala with a woman that I had met at our church not too long before this whole idea happened. So basically what had been going on is my husband Ken, he had been wounded in war, and it was the end of 2007, and we were just kind of like in this weird place of, I want my kids to understand that there's people are worse off in the world than we are. And I had this little group of Christian military wives that were meeting together at our church, and there was this woman, Daphne, who was in our group, and I briefly said something like, I wish that there was something somewhere or just something I could do, I guess, for somebody else who's worse off than us. Like, what can we do? And she starts talking about, she has these 2 children. She adopted them from Guatemala. There's a lot of kids there who need help or encouragement. So I could adopt one online and just like sponsor them online for school supplies. So it started as that. And I was showing Hunter on the computer some of these kids, and he's like, I want to sponsor this one. And he points at this little boy, Marcus. And Hunter says to me, can we go visit him? And I was like, oh no, we can't do that. Like, that's just not a possibility. So I mentioned it at the next get together at church that, oh, Hunter wants to go to Guatemala. And Miss Daphne, she's like, well, I know we don't know each other very well, but I've been there a couple of times. I don't know Spanish. I'll go with you though. So her and we planned this trip to Guatemala on the condition that we could find really cheap plane tickets, because we didn't know how much longer he would be in the military because he was going through this med board process. And to make a long story short, we found really cheap plane tickets. I mean, I'm talking like $208 round trip per person.
Can you imagine?
And so we're planning this, and about a week out, I said, I don't really have a translator. We don't know Spanish, but we're still going. And so then a couple of days later, after that thought was in the back of my head, like, this is going to be an interesting trip. I was at Barnes and Noble, and I hear this beautiful blonde lady speaking fluent Spanish to her children. Not what I exactly pictured, because when I first heard somebody speaking Spanish, I automatically, in my head, I'm thinking it's going to be somebody of a Hispanic background. And when I see her, I'm like, what in the world? She's like this gorgeous, like supermodel with this blonde hair, like shimmering like an angel in the background. And I'm like, I'm going to go talk to her. So
oh my gosh.
went over and was like, I hear you're speaking Spanish. That's pretty neat. We're going to Guatemala. Hunter and I are going to Guatemala. Candace says, who's your interpreter going to be? Because, you don't speak Spanish, right? We kind of get in this conversation, and I was like, I don't know, you want to go? Jokingly, half jokingly. And she's like, I'll let you know. And that's my side of the story. She goes home and tells her husband, like, these women are crazy. They're taking their small children to Guatemala, which is a third world country. They do not speak Spanish. I'm pretty much afraid for them.
Yep.
And 3 days later, We went to Guatemala.
We did.
together.
We were on a plane together in 3 days. Yeah. And I was worried. I was genuinely
Yeah.
worried.
But now she knows me, and she knows I'm tiny, but I can take people out at their
You are-
kneecaps if I have to.
You're fierce. That is so true. Yeah. I was concerned. I was very recently out of the military, so I was still in that protection mode. And so, Spanish, I went to Georgetown University, and the School of Foreign Service, you have to be fluent in foreign language to graduate. And so, even though I thought Southern and English were two different languages, apparently that did not pass. So I learned Spanish, but you don't use it, you lose it. That's for sure. But that was an amazing adventure down there. That was an amazing opportunity, and it was great to get to know you there. But also, it's just, it really is your nature, and it exemplifies who you are and what you've become in your heart for service. It just shows through. Then you're just like, I'm going to find a way. I don't speak Spanish, but I'm going to find a way. And I don't know if we can afford it, but I'm going to find a way. And that's who you are. And that, it attracts people to you because you're selfless and you're genuine and authentic. And it's an honor to know you even before you worked in any other field, but being Patti, what you see is what you get with you. And I love it so much.
Well, thank you. I think that's how we were able to connect, though, because I feel the same about you. When I met Candace, I had no idea really what her background was. And, we're in this bookstore. I mean, thinking about it, I could have ended up in Guatemala with a crazier woman than the people there that I thought I was being protected from. But no, but really, I'm just joking, you guys. When you meet Candace in person, you just know that she's such an authentic person and so genuine, and just has a really big heart to help people. And over the years, especially, I've learned to just connect with those people, those like-minded people who will have your back, and who really have the backs of those who are, for instance, my case, she was looking out for me, and she would look out for any of you watching. If it came to what she would think would be a decision of either life or death, or getting yourself into a bad situation, she would warn you. She would tell you,
for sure.
And I really very much appreciate that in Candace, and then her continued heart over the years just to help people. That's her service to the country speaks volumes. Her country to the service when she was in the military. After she's gotten out, she's done a lot of amazing things, and now she's taken in boys that needed a home. And I mean, that's a huge deal.
It's been an interesting process for sure.
Yeah.
It's been, it's been enlightening. Like the culture, my children are, one of them is Hazara, which is a minority within a minority, which is crazy. They're Muslim. I have a deep Christian faith. But it's been so beautiful to watch my biological children and our other boys now, they're best of friends, and they're liaisons to help people understand you're just people. You just want to love your family, you protect them, and the differences really aren't significant. We are so much alike, and to be able to see that. And Patti, you'd asked earlier kind of where it was going. So I needed a little bit of a break to help the children kind of acclimate. We didn't have to, let me rephrase it. We bought a new house because now there are 7 children. Our current house didn't fit that. So we bought a new house, we moved, we had a lot of moving pieces going on, and I needed time to help everyone, acclimate to the new environment. But now I'm back with the Black Feather Foundation. And let me tell you, so one of the gentlemen that was over there, his name is Joe Robert. And I just meet him, and he's Joe, just a good guy that's there doing the right thing. Well, fast forward, and he is the founder of the organization I work for. And if you could define altruistic, there's nothing more altruistic than what he has done and where he is going with the organization. So I'm very honored to be a part of this. And through the program, we're trying to help children acclimate to their new environment. And I was very poor growing up. We lived in I was on food stamps. I had free lunch at school back when it was it was kind of a discriminator. And so we were very poor as we ebbed and flowed through my childhood. And sports was my way out. I mean, it was my way out. It was my ticket. Everything I am is because I can handle physical pain, which helps me handle mental pain. It gives you a sense of tenacity that just changes everything, and to be able to work in groups and the team dynamics. So we saw that with my children now, with the Afghan children, in just acclimating to this new culture through sports. I mean, they're learning culture and nuances and how to cuss properly. But they're learning all these things through sports. And in that, I'm also being drawn into the new community that I moved to. I'm meeting other parents. And it was just kind of an epiphany, like, wow, through the children, we are helping families, everybody just adjust to the new norm and learn new cultural things and make friends and have connections outside of just their house. So it's been an amazing process with the Black Feather Foundation.
That is so amazing. And I look forward to asking you some questions next year to see how you've progressed. And I think that you're just an amazing person. And it's funny that I never would have thought that I would meet her in North Carolina. And then all of a sudden, I think we connected on Facebook, and we were basically like, hey, where are you located? And she was like, Tampa. And I said, you're kidding me. Like, we're in Florida also. And so it's a pretty cool thing.
Pretty amazing.
So thank you. And Candace, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, first, again, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for letting me talk about the Black Feather Foundation. And we are truly humbled to, everything that's happened has just been a gift. Like you've worked very hard to get where you are, but you might not see it that way, but the decisions that you're making propel you forward, and every decision has made you become just who you are. And it's amazing. And I just look back and I'm lucky to have had the people in my life and meet the people that I've met, and to be able to be here on your show.
Thank you. I feel the same. You all, that's probably the mushiest you've ever heard on the show. And it won't happen again, I promise. But thank you all for listening. And you're going to hear from Candace again in the near future, I think. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, and have an amazing rest of your week. I do want to do a shameless plug for my affiliate, Brave Experience. They are a beef jerky company. So you'll have the link in the show notes if you want a 10% discount. They're all organic, and they have ranches across America where they're getting their meat. They do not have anything distributed from any other countries. It's all here in the US. So thanks to everybody, and have an amazing rest of your week.